we will go ahead and get started. I am Ashley with Journey. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, this is a mini webinar, so this will be very quick, short and sweet here. But we like to do these in between our larger webinars just to kind of help highlight some things that we know that clients have questions on, but also know that sometimes it's just nice to make sure you know what's being done, or certain parts of Journey or certain parts of our payroll service and how we handle them, but as well as how we can help you. So thank you guys again for tuning in. We really appreciate it. So today's topic is garnishments. There can definitely be a lot of questions around garnishments. How are they handled? Our wonderful Candace put together some slides here to kind of help go over exactly what our process is at Journey and how we handle these. And so we will get started here. So what is a garnishment? Most of you probably are aware of what garnishments are. But garnishments, it's a court-ordered document that is sent to you in regards to an employee that might be working for you. And it's to basically collect from their wages any sort of debt that they have outstanding and or a child support. So again, this can be child support, spousal support, taxes, or any other overdue debts. Most wages are subject to garnishment, with the exception of things like tips, generally speaking. But if you have any questions, as far as what kind of wages people earn that might be different from or exempt from being garnished, definitely reach out to us and we can go through those kinds of questions that you have. When a garnishment is sent, and this is probably one of the biggest things that everybody needs to kind of keep in mind, but when garnishment orders are sent, a copy does go to the employee and a copy goes to the employer. Now, one big thing to keep in mind is that timing is huge on these. Oftentimes employees, we don't rely on employees to bring them in to us, which is why it's nice that we get a copy as well. But timing is huge with this kind of stuff, because if you cannot sit on a garnishment. It is not something that you can just get to when you get to it. It again is court ordered, which as the employer, once it's been served to you, it is your responsibility at that point. So don't let those things go. I always tell clients, if you get a garnishment or child support order, it needs to get off of your desk just as quickly as it came. So and it's not optional. You don't get to say as the employer that you're not going to garnish somebody's wages, or that that's not your responsibility. It is your responsibility as the employer to garnish that out of the employee's wages. So unless you want to pay for their debt and or their child support, it's definitely important that you guys get those turned in and not wait. What does it look like? Every wage garnishment looks different, but typically it will consist of multiple pages that will detail things like the amount, the timing of it, maximum dollar amounts that can be taken, and where the payment should be sent to, which is really important with this is we've got to know exactly, where it's going, how much is going, any reference numbers that they want on there, the employee's information needs to be on there. And so, that all will be contained in the paperwork, which again is why we like to have it come directly to Journey. We can decipher through those things. We can go through and see exactly what each piece of the garnishment means, and probably a lot easier for us than you guys, which is why this is a big service that we do provide. Always go by what the paperwork says and not what your employee thinks or says. This can be another tricky one that employees will tell you, well, I got that paid off, or I already worked with them, or I already talked to them, you don't need to take it. As much as we want to make sure we're supporting the employee, it's not for us to decide whether we can take it or not. It is now a court-ordered document to us as the employer to go ahead and get that garnishment set up. So if they have questions, the employee, not you, not us, but the employee needs to take it up with the court or the issuing garnish or. Excuse me. It is, how do we handle the garnishment? It is super simple because you have a service like us. Some payroll companies might not do this. If you do payroll on your own, this is something that usually you're responsible for, which can have a lot of moving parts and pieces to it. So, you know, generally it's a lot nicer to have a payroll company that can kind of just take this over for you. Not that you don't want to be in the loop. You need to make sure you're checking things like your reports. It's, you know, seeing that it's been set up, that you have a vendor payment being sent, just to double check basis, because that's, again, this is ultimately your responsibility as the employee of the employee being garnished. After you receive it, read over it so you understand the general parameters. This is just so that you can be aware of the time frame. As we talked in the other slides, you just have to be aware of what's going on, but not something that you have to go in and set up yourself. If new order, you know, there's so many different situations. We've seen a lot in our existence as well, but you know, you just have to make sure you're familiar enough with what's going on. If a new order arrives, if stop orders arrive, which that's a big one, stop orders are huge. So yeah, just make sure you're kind of aware of what's going on. Don't pry. This is probably something that doesn't really have to be said, but it's always a good reminder to people that, you know, it's the employee's business. It's not our job to go in and pry and figure out what's going on or why do they have a garnishment or, you know, make them feel bad about it. It is their business. Just your job is to facilitate getting the document to us and know that you're doing what you've been asked to do by the courts. Employees cannot have multiple garnishment orders running at the same time, with the exception of child support. You can have a couple child support orders running at the same time. Child support is handled a little bit differently than a debt collection. And so, you know, once a child support order is set, those definitely supersede any sort of debt collection. But an employee can have, again, multiple child support orders running at the same time. So it's important to know what can and cannot be done. Each state can handle things a little bit differently. So if you're tuning in from a different state, always make sure you kind of talk to your local Journey office or whatever Journey office is running your payroll, and talk to them about how it's done and what the state laws are and what kind of things you need to what things you need to keep in mind in order to make sure you're doing your due diligence. An employee could also have one of each, a child support order and a garnishment. The child support order will always be taken first and the garnishment second if there is anything or enough left over. So that's another one to keep in mind too for anybody that might have one of each. And garnishments are typically valid for 182 days before the company has to reissue it. If the employee happens to have another garnishment waiting, the new one takes place of the old one after the 182-day period. How do you handle them? The garnishments or child support orders will always have a maximum amount that can be taken. If your employee has concerns about the amount that is taken from their check, huge point right here. This is something they absolutely must address with the court or garnishing agency. Journey is not liable to be telling the employee anything and or how to handle that, and you as the employer really don't have that legal liability either. We have to follow what is on a court order, and you guys should do the same with your client or your employees to make sure that they understand that this is not something that is between the employer or the payroll company. This is between the employee and the issuing agency. After you have insured, you have a copy in a secure location. So make sure, keep a copy for your files. It's definitely not something that you want to leave sitting around. Don't shred it, don't recycle it. Keep it in there because if for some reason you need to reference it, it would most definitely be good to have that on file. And then typically you'd have to deduct the amount from the employee's paycheck and cut a check for third parties. If you didn't use a service like Journey, this is something you guys would have to do, but because you use a service like Journey, we do this for you. So again, that's why it's super simple You get served a garnishment, you give it to us here at Journey. We will set it up, we will read through the calculations, we will get it programmed in there. We'll deduct it from the employee's paycheck, and it will go straight to the issuing agency to be taken care of right away. So again, this removes you from having any sort of liability inside of that. When you receive a stop order, so this is also as equally as important as receiving the order, the stop order is hugely important, especially to that employee. We don't want to overpay garnishments. We also don't want to be taking money from an employee's check that really shouldn't have it taken at that point. So as soon as you receive that stop order for the garnishment, send it over to us. Do not ever, though, stop an employee's garnishment until you receive a copy of that order. The employee can come to you and say, hey, I went ahead and talked to them and got it taken care of, so you don't have to take that out of my paycheck anymore. Not that any of us like to think that we might have employees that would say that, but it is important for you guys to know that that's something you guys are not able to just stop on your own. And you can't tell us to just stop it. That's quite illegal. You'll want to make sure that you have that order in place in your hands, in your office, in your files, to make sure that if we do go ahead and stop that, they're not going to come back on you guys to say we haven't received money. And then once we receive that order, we'll stop the garnishment. Everything else will be done. We remove it from their profile, and no more money will be taken at that point for that specific garnishment. So, and if an employee says there's discrepancies, they have to go straight to the court and they have to get something in writing, which you guys should be served to say that the garnishment is satisfied. So again, big piece of having Journey as your payroll company is that we can do this kind of stuff for you. We can take control of it. We can keep it from being something that you guys have to worry about and stress about and be on the hook for. So we most certainly want to make sure that we make that process easy for you. And that does conclude. I was going to tell you guys a funny story, because we do actually have clients before that have said, you know, oh, I just don't think I'm going to do this. And, you know, at Journey, we're just big proponents of making sure that everybody, every one of our clients is, you know, following what protocols and procedures they need to do. And, you know, it just makes me realize that this is why, you know, we want to be able to educate our clients on certain things, because had that client not had a service like us and decided they just weren't going to take that garnishment from that employee, you know, they could have been in a lot of trouble. And that's not something we want our clients taking the responsibility for each of their employees. So kind of an interesting, you know, way to look at it. Sometimes I just thought I'd share that story with you, but it is kind of funny how some people think that this might be optional, and it's most definitely not optional. So yeah, so hopefully that helped you guys to understand garnishments a little bit more if you didn't have a whole lot of info on them before. Some of you might be seasoned vets with this and not really you know, not really needed all of the information, but I appreciate everybody tuning in, and pass it along to anybody else in your office that might have questions. We will post these, so if anybody missed it and wants to get it sent out, we can most certainly do that. And if there are no other questions, or no questions right now, we will go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you all again so much for attending. Hope you guys have a great week, and we will see you in a couple weeks.